This is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals.
Expensive.
It should be public, it should be quick, it should be televised. You could have like brought to you by Coca-Cola. And no, I'm not kidding. By the way, I would totally tune in to see some pedo get their head chopped off.
Can you imagine a world where the death penalty was a public spectacle? We saw what happened when Charlie Kirk's death was accidentally streamed and watched live as it happened in real time. The shock, the horror, and even the instant celebration. The ugly memes and jokes about his death, the mocking, the laughing, the anger that people felt when they saw this. If what Charlie Kirk wanted was made a reality, we would be living this daily as people were executed on live streams. Imagine the effect on children watching the brutal execution of criminals and people enjoying it, mocking, laughing, sharing graphic memes with heads rolling and laughing emojis. Charlie Kirk said death penalties should be public, quick, and televised, even suggesting kids should watch, that it could be an initiation, and that the guillotine was holy, that commercials could run during executions, and that seeing a pedophile's head cut off would make his day.
This is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals.
Expensive.
It should be public, it should be quick, it should be televised. You could have like brought to you by Coca-Cola. And no, I'm not kidding. By the way, I would totally tune in to see some pedo get their head chopped off.
Yeah.
And you know what? I want to watch that execution. That'll make my day better. I want to see him on a public block and get him be publicly executed.
I heard this clip and was dumbfounded. People are claiming Charlie's words are being taken out of context. So I tracked down the original episode of this podcast called Thought Crime. Episode 33 is about 1 hour and 30 minutes long. Their conversation about the death penalty starts at around the 25-minute mark and lasts for about 30 minutes. And the last 10 minutes of that is about public execution. To save you 20 minutes of time, I'll summarize what they discussed regarding the death penalty and then play for you the full discussion regarding public executions. They start off by talking about the death penalty for pedophiles. Then they talk about the pros and cons of the death penalty. Then Kirk says this, and actually I'll play the clip of this because it's worth mentioning.
As a Bible-believing Christian, I cannot possibly morally disagree with the death penalty. The Catholic Church does, and I think they're totally wrong. It is a law in all 5 books of the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Yeah. And I've moved on it. I've changed on this. And I think that if you take a life, your life should be taken. And I think if you are a pedophile, it's the same as taking a life. You take the innocence of a child. I think your life should be taken.
Then they discuss the history of the Catholic Church and their stance on the death penalty. Then they talk about what other crimes they would support the death penalty for. And they talk about normalizing killing people for pedophilia. And after a long-winded advertisement, the topic of public executions comes up. And this is where I'll play the 10-minute clip. If at any time you've heard enough, because honestly, the original clip doesn't really change with context, feel free to skip ahead to the next chapter where we will talk about it.
This is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals.
Expensive.
It should be public, it should be quick, it should be televised.
This can't be right, can it? The last execution in France was guillotine in 1977.
100% true. They used the guillotine.
Until 77?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
There's videotape of it.
Honestly, that's like what we should be doing, and I agree. It should be public
and
televised.
Public
square.
By the way, you could fund
Force
the government
kids to watch it.
You could have like brought to you by Coca-Cola. And no, I'm not kidding. By the way, I would totally tune in to see some pedo get their head chopped off. Convicted by a jury
By the
or
way,
peers.
That's gonna get
no. I'm talking about a real thing. I'm not talking
all
about
executions in Belarus are by firearm. That's not a choice or anything.
Andrew's saying don't make kids watch it, and I think no, the absolute
I think
opposite.
at a certain age, it's an initiation.
16, if you can drive, you can watch it.
No, but hold on.
Not even 16.
If
I would
all of a
say-
sudden you look at some of these savages, like in Indiana, there was this guy that went in and killed a pregnant woman and her 3 kids.
Yeah.
And you know what? I want to watch that execution. That'll make my day better. I want to see him on a public block and get him be publicly executed. And I think that would be justice. You think children should have, you should see it? What is the age? At what age should you start to see public executions?
16.
I think you could do it earlier. I think you maybe at age 12,
Whenever-
like 6th grade or so. You are a person, they're old enough to, you don't need to like really wallow in it and have them be broken on a wheel or anything. But if it was something like chopping, if we had a guillotine or something.
I think it's the age where they can't be, I think there's too early and you become desensitized to maybe like this. I think it's when you can actually embrace.
But it should also be
the
taken
meaning.
in a holy way.
The meaning.
No, I don't mean holy in a bad way. I mean that like this is heavy.
Like this is the
Bluntly,
meaning
we
of
have
it.
kids who are 14 who are committing carjackings in
100%.
cities and doing
Yes.
bad stuff. And I think
Yeah, you're
if
probably
you sent
right.
the
Maybe
message
like
to them, if you do a bad crime, you will die, and it will be like this, and that
No,
will
but
be
just-
you.
just
But I
for-
think it
would be
tears
a
down.
positive message.
So
If-
my argument would be younger people get involved with that because they're around older people who do those things.
I want you to imagine
And gangs.
every day, all of a sudden they said, and today, remember that awful the guy that went and shot up a school? Because, left hates school shooters, and so do we. But they focus on the gun. I think they're evil. So, you take one of these school shooters, and they say, today we're going to publicly execute this person. And
About
they read
the
off.
Super Bowl.
No, yeah, the shooters at the Super Bowl thing, and you read off what they did.
parade, not
and
the- not
you
the-
don't, you don't celebrate it. You just say, look, this is what they did, and if you do this, this will be your fate. Ready, set, go. Boom, end of life, and say.
Guillotine.
And I just a
Scared
question.
Straight used to be a whole TV show.
No, but
like
I-
this is
as a
Scared
question-
Straight for everybody.
Here's a question for anyone that might be, not persuaded. Would crime go up or down?
It would go way down.
Done. So that why is this even a question?
Well, they'll
this-
say it's not a deterrent, and it's not because
course
our
it's a
current,
deterrent,
our current,
though.
and our current system is just as dumb as it could possibly be.
You get a
only
last
do it-
meal. No, they should
And it's
make
not
you
even
eat
that.
bran.
It's that
I'm gonna
it's
tell-
only done for a tiny minority of even murderers. Only a handful of murderers actually get it, and then
Yes.
their odds of getting executed are very low. And it happens 25 years later. You have to run articles in the newspaper to remind people why this bad person was on death row in the first place.
I'm going to tell you, this is what's so frustrating about American culture. I mean, we took all the best parts of Greek culture and Roman culture and French culture and the Revolution and everything else, and we didn't keep this part. Like, we have the Colosseums for sports, but we don't have it for this. I totally agree with this sentiment. Is like we shouldn't make it like a celebration.
No,
around
it should be a
somebody.
heavy thing.
It should be a heavy thing. It's corporal punishment.
way-
It's capital punishment.
By the way, well, there is a difference between corporal punishment and capital punishment. That's a
corporals.
totally separate
Yeah.
conversation. But
should have more
the
corporal
Singapore op,
punishment, too.
yeah,
Correct.
that's what I was gonna say. If you really want to have a
works.
question about, look, if you were a criminal and you were convicted and you were sentenced, but you were given a choice, you're gonna say, all right, 20 years in jail or 20 lashes. What are you taking?
Yeah, and
You're
so
taking the lashes. Everyone's gonna take the lashes.
and just so everyone is clear, this might sound crazy to some people. Oh my goodness, if you commit what we would call a heinous crime, if you commit a crime against a human being and take their life, the current way that we do this is you get room and board and food for the remainder. Has that made society safer, lessened heinous crimes? Wouldn't it make sense to put the law, justice, on display for other people to see what happens when you do these things?
Yeah.
I totally
It's-
agree with Jack too on the lashing part too. Like the
Flogging?
corporal
All
That
those
would be
flogging.
cheaper too. I think that would
Singapore
be. I
option.
think corporal punishment
Singapore.
would be
All day long.
cheaper. It would be faster, and it
Effective.
would be it would be more effective. I think.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think Donald Trump was spot on when he said drug dealers should get the death penalty. And he was
Yeah.
attacked for that.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Okay, we all agree. Very normal mainstream opinions here, everybody. No thought. I don't even think these are thought crimes. I don't know how
Now,
anyone could
speaking of
possibly
people-
disagree with
No,
that.
but you look at, we brought up Jodi Arias because we were talking about why Mormons kill like their families and stuff like that and all the stuff we were talking about that.
Okay, all right.
We know there's a whole chat. There's like a whole line of like
We're talking about
Mormons
the
that go
chat, folks.
crazy.
We're talking about it on here.
Yeah,
on
not
the
here, not here. But Jodi Arias, she was guilty. She's like literally on camera. This woman like has now developed an entire life and a lifestyle in prison, like with all these boyfriends and like book deals
disgusting.
and like it's disgusting. Like she should be dead.
Yes.
she killed a guy in cold blood on camera. She admitted it later, and she just is like living a lifestyle in prison now.
And I will say this. my anti-death penalty impulse is also important to contribute. The only negative is if they would use it against people for political conservative crimes. Think about it. And they would. The regime would.
What about Jeff Doucette?
That's why, I mean, that is why.
Yes.
We'll get to that in a second. That is why in the Constitution we have that strict definition of treason.
Oh, yes.
The strict definition of treason, you need 2 witnesses, and it only is levying war against the United States or giving aid and comfort to its enemies. They give that precise definition because in England they had the problem of that liberal use of treason, where you're undermining the body politic. That's treason, and then you execute them for that. And that's why there's a ban on bills of attainder, because, for example, during the English Revolution against King Charles, they had passed a bill of attainder and just executed a guy because they said basically he was a bad dude, and Parliament just said, we don't need a judge, we don't need a jury, we are the judge and jury, and your head's going off.
Okay, so let's get to the next topic here.
A lot. I mean, Joe Biden is a bumbling, dementia-filled Alzheimer's corrupt tyrant who should honestly be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America.
Charlie Kirk said execution could be holy, even calling the guillotine holy. That idea may sound shocking, but it isn't new. Throughout history, executions have often been framed as moral, sacred, or purifying acts. Take Maximilien Robespierre, one of the most powerful figures of the French Revolution. He led the Committee of Public Safety during the Reign of Terror, where thousands were executed by guillotine. Robespierre declared that terror is nothing other than prompt, severe, inflexible justice. It is therefore an emanation of virtue. In other words, he claimed executions were not just political, but sacred acts of virtue. Crowds during the revolution were not passive witnesses. Eyewitnesses described the guillotine as a public spectacle. The people assemble in thousands to view the executions, as if it were a fete, which means festival. They laugh, sing, and clamor for more blood, as though it were a sport. Thomas Carlyle, a historian, described the Paris guillotine crowds in 1793. The guillotine is the one thing that never fails. The throngs crowd around it day after day. Their appetite is not sated, but sharpened. Women take their knitting to the Place de la Révolution, where they sit and watch heads fall as at a play. William Makepeace Thackeray describes the crowd's reaction when going to see a man hanged. As the clock began to strike, an immense sway and movement swept over the whole of the vast, dense crowd. They were all uncovered directly, and a great murmur arose, more awful, bizarre, and indescribable than any sound I have ever heard before. Women and children began to shriek horribly. I came away from that exhibition with a disgust for murder, but it was the crowd of the thousands who stood around me, a brutalized, depraved, miserable crowd whose glee was hideous to witness. I feel myself ashamed and degraded at the brutal curiosity which took me to that brutal sight to cleanse our land of blood. These are historical examples of mob mentality amplified by spectacle, executions presented as public ritual, framed as sacred or virtuous, creating both fear and fascination. We also have the witch trials and heresy executions. Burning witches was framed as purifying the community. One writer says about these killings in 1486, "The punishment of death is in accordance with divine law. For the heretic who is truly penitent, the fire is purgation. For the obstinate, it is damnation revealed." The Old Testament law also allowed for stoning for blasphemy or idolatry and was framed as a sacred act to cleanse the community. You shall purge the evil from your midst. Literary and fictional examples. In The Handmaid's Tale, executions are called salvagings, and are ceremonial and ritualized. The salvaging is not a religious ceremony in the ordinary sense. There is no priest, but it is a ritual, and the solemnity of it is what matters. We are to feel awe, a mingled fear and respect, like the one felt at a funeral or a sacrifice. And then there is also particicution, where handmaids are ordered to beat a man to death. You know the rules. You must all participate. It is a duty. You will be protecting yourselves and your children. The punishment is death, and you must be the ones to carry it out. Biblical language also sanctifies this act in the book. For the wages of sin is death, but the hand of the Lord shall smite them, for they shall fall by the sword. Blessed be the punishment of his hand.
Amen. We are here today in the name of duty. And sometimes duty is a hard taskmaster. This woman, whom we all knew as a handmaid, has been found guilty of seduction and fornication with a member of the medical staff. Why does God demand her death? For her sins! For her sins! For her sins! Order, order. You may form a circle. Orderly, orderly. This man has been convicted of the rape of a handmaid. Deuteronomy 25. If the man forces her and lies with her, then the man that lay with her shall die. This crime took place at gunpoint. The handmaid was pregnant. The baby died.
No rapist. He was a political. One of our best men. Hi. How are you doing? Have a nice day. Have a nice day. Have a nice day.
In Orwell's 1984, public hangings in Oceania are staged spectacles designed to terrify the populace and enforce loyalty. The executions are performed with ritualistic intensity, echoing the sacred or purifying framing found in history and dystopian fiction. But now let's talk about public executions in the United States and why we no longer carry on such a barbaric practice. In 1845, in the United States, Louis P. Monsieur describes the spectators treating hangings like picnics, drinking, joking, and demanding more executions. An account from a Kentucky hanging in 1845 says, "The crowd was immense. Men, women, and children came in wagons and on foot with baskets as if to a picnic. Liquor was plentiful, and the scene soon became riotous. Shouts, cheers, and obscene songs filled the air as the condemned man was brought forth. When the trap fell, a great roar rose from the multitude. Hats flew into the air, and some clamored that another victim be given them. A hanging in this city has become little better than a holiday gathering. Children are lifted on shoulders to see better. Cries of derision and drunkenness mark the scene. Far from deterring crime, such exhibitions brutalize the public mind. Mob lynchings in the United States were another form of public execution. After the Civil War and into the 20th century, lynchings became ritualized public spectacles in the American South. They were often framed as defending community virtue, purity, and order. In other words, a kind of holy violence. And there was religious framing. Some ministers openly defended lynching as necessary for protecting morality. Reverend E. Talmage, for instance, was quoted describing lynching as the wrath of God's people upon the devourer of virtue. Lynchings were frequently public ritualistic events. Crowds sometimes reached thousands. Spectators brought children, food, even cameras. Ida B. Wells documented how lynchings were advertised in newspapers and treated like a grim form of entertainment. Souvenirs were even available. Victims' body parts, clothing, and photographs were taken as souvenirs. Postcards of lynchings were mailed as if they were holiday keepsakes. Ministers and community leaders sometimes called lynching justice ordained by God, a communal cleansing of sin, echoing the same rhetoric Robespierre used during the French Revolution and the kind of ritualistic holy executions seen in The Handmaid's Tale. Social psychology shows this is de-individuation and crowd contagion, spectacle, ritual, and emotion amplify aggression. Public executions don't calm society. They normalize brutality, and people only cry out for more. This is the sick and twisted reality of public executions. Charlie Kirk either has no clue what he was talking about, or knew exactly what he was encouraging. So let's connect the dots. Charlie Kirk's holy guillotine remark echoes a long tradition. History and literature show that sacralizing violence feeds mob mentality, dehumanizes victims, and normalizes brutal violence, no matter how quote-unquote holy it is claimed to be. The reality is that when a group gathers for a violent spectacle, people are more likely to lose inhibition, cheer for death, and even join in violence. This is why most countries have abolished public executions. They don't civilize society. Can you imagine a world where the death penalty was a public spectacle? We saw what happened when Charlie Kirk's death was accidentally streamed and watched live as it happened in real time. The shock, the horror, and even the instant celebration. The ugly memes and jokes about his death, the mocking, the laughing, the anger that people felt when they saw this. If what Charlie Kirk wanted was made a reality, we would be living this daily as people were executed on live streams. Imagine the effect on children watching the brutal execution of criminals and people enjoying it, mocking, laughing, sharing graphic memes with heads rolling and laughing emojis. Charlie Kirk said death penalties should be public, quick, and televised, even suggesting kids should watch, that it could be an initiation, and that the guillotine was holy, that commercials could run during executions, and that seeing a pedophile's head cut off would make his day. These comments by Charlie are sadistic, and they definitely don't align with the fruit of the Spirit that Scripture teaches, that Charlie Kirk claimed to believe. While I am sickened and disgusted with some of the reactions to Charlie Kirk's death, I am also sickened and disgusted with some of the things Charlie Kirk said. We watched the clip in its full context. God does not delight in the death of the wicked, nor should we celebrate someone's death, even if they quote-unquote deserved it. I understand wanting justice when people have committed crimes, but not bloodlust, not joy in vengeance. I won't celebrate violence, but I also won't celebrate someone who would celebrate violence. I don't believe turning executions into TV spectacle would make us safer, as Charlie Kirk claimed it would. And while Charlie claimed it wouldn't be a spectacle, I think we all know that's what it would inevitably become. I'm not aware of any evidence that the death penalty is a deterrent of crime, but I think it's reasonable to say that it would desensitize people to violence, traumatize children and adults, and normalize cruelty as entertainment. We don't build a better society by watching people die, by delighting in their demise. We don't build society by cultivating fear and brutality. I believe we build it by preventing crime, treating people with dignity, and refusing to let cruelty become our culture. And commercializing death, that turns justice into a ratings stunt, death for profit, not a moral or legal system. Historically, public executions were abandoned because they fueled mob mentality, the very opposite of justice. And we have enough of a mob mentality in politics already. And as the divide grows, we have a president who stated outright that he simply does not care.
Radicals on the right as well. We have radicals on the left. People are watching all of these videos and cheering. Some people are cheering that Charlie was killed. How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem.
It feels surreal, like this life and what's happening isn't even real anymore. I've been wanting to speak out for a long time, but politics is not my area of expertise. I'm someone who is very Bible literate, who escaped from a cult, and has been trying to show people problems within the Christian culture so that they can be freed from many of the constraints of churchianity and tradition that really come from people rather than the Bible itself. And now I'm watching that problematic culture fusing with politics and creating a bigger monster. And just so you know, I'm not a huge fan of a number of things on the left side either. As an independent, I'm often wishing that we had an alternative to these two camps. But back to Trump. He bluntly admits in this video that he does not care about what is happening. If anyone is going to fix our country, it has to be us. If we could be more understanding and care for one another instead of constantly fighting. Violence and hate will only beget more violence and hate. But if we cultivate love for our neighbor and try to understand each other, we can build something better. But let's go back to Charlie Kirk. In the same thought crime episode, Charlie said this.
As a Bible-believing Christian, I cannot possibly morally disagree with the death penalty.
It's big. It's really
so
big.
What I will say, even if those of you that are in the audience against the death penalty, what I don't understand is committing your life to advocacy for people that have done really bad things and not giving a darn about people in the womb that have done nothing, that are completely innocent. That's the moral equivalency I've never understand. People say, well, how can you be against the death penalty, but also, I mean, in favor of death penalty, but also against abortion?
I always found that weird, and people use it like it was a strong argument.
I think it's one of the worst arguments because the baby has done nothing.
Deep down, I think a lot of liberals see themselves in every vicious murderer who has been sentenced to death, and so they sympathize with them quite openly. So
that's
why
really
would they
dark.
not support them? Yeah, it's dark, but
see, I don't see myself.
I don't exactly
in these murderers,
and the idea that it's always just very difficult for me to imagine having too much sympathy for anyone where you could have done literally anything with your entire life and you chose to wantonly kill someone, prey on anyone, destroy a child's life. And our current system is just as dumb as it could possibly be.
You get a
only
last
do it-
meal. No, they should
and
make
it's not
you
even
eat
that.
bran.
I think this is a tragic example of what happens when empathy is discarded. As Charlie Kirk has also said,
Bill Clinton in the 1990s, it was all about empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage, but it is very effective when it comes to politics. Sympathy I prefer more than empathy. That's a separate topic for a different time.
Charlie doesn't understand why the left is so concerned about how criminals are treated. He didn't understand why criminals got a last meal of their choice and said he thought they should just be fed slop instead. This shows us a lot about his character. We should show love and compassion to people because they are human beings and because we want to treat them the way that we would want to be treated. You know, the golden rule that Charlie Kirk seemed to forget or choose to ignore. The mentality of just giving people what they deserve, treating them poorly even when they are about to die, doesn't make us good or just people. He lacks the understanding of what it is to empathize with an individual who is about to have their life taken away and the terror of what they are about to face. It is our opportunity to show them the tiniest bit of kindness and humanity. Even criminals are human beings. And even though they should receive justice or punishment for their crimes, that doesn't mean we should treat them with cruelty, that we need to stop being humane, or that we should discard our empathy to mistreat people and then justify it. Just because someone is on death row doesn't all of a sudden erase the biblical instruction to treat them the way we would want to be treated. That's why I take issue also with people who say, I have no empathy for Charlie because he's someone who didn't have empathy for others. And as I've seen this posted by individuals more times than I can count, it makes me think, if we do that, then we end up lowering ourselves to their same level instead of being better. I've seen beautiful examples of empathy from people on the left who disagreed with virtually everything that Charlie believed. Dean Withers was someone who disagreed with Charlie and often engaged in debate with him. Even though he sometimes called out Charlie Kirk, he illustrated what empathy looks like. On his live stream, Dean broke down crying over what happened. And yes, some of his own followers turned on him because of his display of emotion and compassion for Charlie Kirk.
Doesn't deserve that, man. Him and his family, they don't deserve that. Listen. His kids don't fucking deserve that, man. His wife and children were in attendance, dude. Imagine, you know, imagine being a 12-year-old, you know, watching your dad fucking die. Nobody deserves that. Not even Charlie Kirk. Nobody deserves that. In the last 24 hours or so, I've received a lot of public scrutiny and backlash in response to the fact that yesterday, after Charlie Kirk died, I cried, and then the video of me crying was blasted all over the internet. So first and foremost, I am distraught because of what happened to Kirk. I think that gun violence is always wrong, and I also think that violence leads to more violence. In fact, today we've already had 3 HBCUs go into lockdown because of retaliatory threats in response to what happened to Kirk. And that's my position. That's how I feel. But I'm going to be honest, that on its own isn't what invoked the extreme and raw emotional reaction of tears that you guys saw that I'm now being criticized so heavily for. There's a handful of things that invoke that reaction of mine, and here they are. The first thing that invoked that reaction out of me was watching the up-close video of what had happened to him, and how extremely violent it was, while then also learning that his wife and 3-year-old daughter were watching from the crowd. When this occurred, I momentarily placed myself in the shoes of his wife or 3-year-old daughter, and how they had to watch that, and yes, that made me extremely emotional. The second reason why I cried is because my best friend Parker was standing less than 30 feet away from him when it happened in person. In fact, he was next in line to debate Charlie Kirk. And not only the fact that he had to witness this, but then also then turned around and FaceTime me while he was running away and screaming, not knowing if this might be a mass casualty event where he or anybody else there would be next, was very traumatic for me and on set a lot of emotions. The third reason why I cried is because Charlie Kirk is somebody that I've personally interacted with in real life. Now, the reason why I've personally interacted with him is because I disagreed with nearly every single thing he believed in, and I personally let him know. But I'm not good with gore, and seeing those things happen to somebody that I've personally interacted with in real life was really hard on me psychologically. It's also worth adding on that my tears weren't me telling you how you should feel, but rather you happening to see me and how I felt, because of everything I've just described in this video, all going through my head at the exact same time in the moment of.
Dean explained that while he disagreed with him on almost everything, he still felt for him, still put himself in Kirk's shoes, and imagine what that violence and pain would be like for him, for his wife, for his children, to witness such an awful tragedy. This is what compassion and humanity looks like. Just because we disagree with someone, and even when we think they are bad people, doesn't mean we have lost our empathy and ability to care and put ourselves in their shoes. That's what we're losing as a nation. Just because we disagree with someone, or even recognize their words as harmful, doesn't mean we have to lose our empathy. Let's listen to a clip from someone else who disagreed with just about everything Charlie Kirk said and how they reacted to his death.
Charlie Crist was killed 2 days ago.
Charlie.
I'm sorry.
Kirk. Right?
Kirk. I just call him Crist. I think because of Christ, because of his deep, deep belief. I mean, I disagreed with him on almost every point I ever heard him say. Yeah. But I believe he was a man of faith. And I hope in that moment when he died that he felt connected to his faith, even though I find his ideas were abhorrent to me. Yeah. I still believe he's a father and a husband and a man of faith, and I hope whatever connection to God means that he felt it. My point is, yesterday was 9/11. I know there is video of his assassination. I know people who've seen it. Yesterday, we watched again these images of those buildings coming down. We don't know. Well, we're talking about analog digital. We're talking about a childhood where it was like I had famous parents who were in the movies, but I never saw the movies. I didn't see the images. I didn't. I would have to. How would I ever see them? We didn't have DVDs. We didn't have VHS. We didn't have. They didn't put them on TV. Today, we as a society are bombarded with imagery. So we don't know what the longitudinal effects of seeing those towers come down over and over and over and over again, or watching his execution over and over and over again. We watched the Zapruder film, by the way, my birthday, November 22nd. I'm associated with this awful day of someone being assassinated on television. But it's, as you know, the Zapruder film is the only visual document that moves, that shares that horror of what happened. But here we have now these images.
All the time, every day.
And we are inured to them and we are numb to them, but they are in there. We don't know. We don't know enough psychologically about what that does. What does that do? That kind of, I don't ever want to see this footage of this man being shot.
I didn't watch it. I think it diminishes the depth of humanity.
But if that's the case, then is that the reason why we're all feeling this lack of humanity? Because we are just saturated with this image, these images.
Well, I think our engagement with the technology has become, it's total, we've adapted to it, and it's taken over a good part of our mind.
I hope that through all this, we can hold on to our empathy and our humanity. I won't celebrate death. I won't celebrate cruelty. I'm disgusted by those mocking and laughing at Kirk and making tasteless memes about him. I have more empathy for Charlie than he had for most people. At the same time, I'm disgusted with some of the things Charlie said in ways that showed that he lacked empathy for others. Charlie's comments about those on death row reverberate with the same kind of mentality that justifies the cruel treatment of immigrants. Even if people came here illegally, that does not mean they deserve to be treated with cruelty. It doesn't justify inhumane treatment of anyone. It doesn't justify snatching people up in a way so that their families cannot locate them, or where children are left without their parents and have no idea where their parents are. This is cruel and creates needless suffering. Yet people want to say, oh, well, it's their own fault that they are experiencing this for not coming here illegally. And I would say, sure, if they have broken the law and the legal ramification is deportation, I get that. But it's not their fault when others have chosen particularly cruel methods of going about it. Being here illegally does not justify us doing anything we want to other human beings or going about it in unnecessarily cruel ways. It's important for us to treat them with dignity and not treat them like animals. They are people with loved ones and families. Those who choose to be unnecessarily cruel should be held responsible for their cruelty. You can enact justice. You can keep the rule of law and still treat people with dignity, empathy, and mercy because they are human beings and because you are a human being too. As the divide in our country continues to widen, I call on both the left and the right to try to understand the other side. Here is a clip from a YouTube friend of mine that I believe is so helpful during this time.
All the people who are watching, I want you to think about the anger and the disgust that you feel when you see the vile remarks made about Kirk's death in the last few days. I want you to bring that emotion to your attention. Don't approve of it. No, we're not going to approve of it. I just want you to be aware of it and reflect on it. That feeling, that anger that you have, that hurt, that disgust you feel to seeing those comments, that is the same feeling that Charlie Kirk made other people feel for a living. Charlie Kirk made vile, hateful, racist remarks on the internet for a living. It was his career. He stoked racial and political tensions that have caused a lot of harm. Let me give you some examples. A few minutes ago, I mentioned how the husband of Nancy Pelosi, Paul Pelosi, was attacked in their home. I asked why none of these Christian content creators commented on that attack, but actually there was one Christian content creator who did talk about that attack, and this is what he said.
And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like 30 or 40,000 bucks. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions.
So that is Charlie Kirk saying that the man who violently assaulted the spouse of a Democratic lawmaker should be bailed out of prison, and that to bail him out would be a heroic and patriotic act. He's laughing while he says it. This seems pretty similar to the type of things being said about Kirk online that is getting all of you so angry and riled up. I want you to imagine how you would feel if you were a friend of Paul Pelosi and you heard some guy on the internet saying that it would be a patriotic act to bail out the man who assaulted your friend or your father or your husband or your coworker. Think about how that would make you feel. Wouldn't that probably be the same type of feeling that you have when you read the vile comments cheering on Kirk's death? Let's look at another example.
The least important thing for women who voted for Harris is having children. Alex Marlow, what explains this? Why do so many Democrat women want to die alone? This goes to show why liberal women are so unhappy, why so many liberal women are on antidepressants, why so many liberal women are just neurotic and just so unattractive to young men. Because their number one thing is fulfilling job and career, then having the money to do things you want, having emotional stability. This hyper narcissistic. Liberal women inherently are incredibly narcissistic.
So Kirk just accused liberal women of wanting to die alone because most liberal women didn't define success by popping out babies. Now, that doesn't even remotely follow. Whether or not you define success in your life by having babies does not mean that you want to die alone. But Kirk, in his usual hateful manner, continues to attack these women and say that they are narcissists, they are neurotic, they are unattractive. Why? Because on a poll where women had to select 3 things that they prioritized most liberal women didn't choose having kids. Not only is this immensely stupid and hateful, it's unbiblical. Guess what, everybody? Paul explicitly says in the New Testament, it is better to remain unmarried. Paul would not have defined his success in life by the kids that he had. So I guess according to Kirk, Paul was also a narcissist. Imagine that you are a woman who doesn't want to have kids, but you spend your time volunteering or working in a ministry or creating community, and Charlie Kirk tells you that you are unattractive, neurotic narcissist because you decided that you would rather focus on other things than child rearing. And you know, like how Paul talks about focusing on other things besides marriage, you know, that whole thing. Imagine how you would feel as a woman hearing that. Imagine how you would feel as a man hearing somebody insult your wife like that. Let's go to the next example. This comes from a conversation that Kirk had on a college campus about rape.
The point is that it's so materially insane to think that 1 in 5 American women will be raped in their life.
It is. I agree.
No, meaning that they're lying about being raped, that they're lying about being sexually assaulted.
You believe that people lie about being sexually... See,
all
this is
the
actually,
time.
this feeds into what I was
all
saying.
All the time.
This is...
So let's begin by getting a few things straight here, right? There's a mountain of literature researching sexual assault and its prevalence in our society. Multiple studies, surveys have been done, which indicate that on the lower end of the estimates, around there, roughly 1 in 5 women suffer from sexual assault. Charlie Kirk, in the face of that data, rejects it. He rejects all of the data, the well-researched analytic data about sexual assault in this country. And you know why he rejected it? In that video, he gave roughly 2 arguments. The first being that, well, that would be comparable to the number of rapes in some third world country, and it's just inconceivable to think that we have the same, percentage of rapes as a third world country. which is dumb, whether or not our statistics about sexual assault correlate with the statistics of some other country that you want to feel superior to, that doesn't undercut the hard data that we have suggesting that those are the statistics that are the case in America. And his other argument is that, well, if so many women get raped at college, why do women still go to college? QED, infallible logic. This is also stupid because a lot of women may not know about the statistics in question, or they may feel like it won't happen to them, or maybe they feel like the risk is worth it because they want an education to better their lives. The point is, Charlie Kirk made a blanket statement about rape victims being liars. He didn't base this statement on any studies, any alternative surveys, anything. He just asserted it because he couldn't fathom the idea that the great USA would have the same rape rates as a third world country. This is disgusting and despicable. Imagine that you are a woman who has been raped, or imagine your wife or your daughter has been raped, and you have seen the trauma that has created in their life, and you hear Charlie Kirk saying, no, they're just lying. He's encouraging young men to, when they are faced with, reports of sexual assault, to just, when they lie about that stuff, right? They're just making it up, all because he apparently wants to feel superior to a third world country. Imagine the anger and the disgust that would cause you to feel. Imagine the effect that this has on society when Kirk, who is an influential guy with many young men, he goes out and he encourages them to accuse rape victims of lying. Let's look at another example.
In fact, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise today as a clear recipient of affirmative action, and particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color. But I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
I hear because of action affirmative. She can't even say that. We know. It's very obvious to us that you were not smart enough to be able to get in on your own.
If you listen to that clip and you, as a Christian, do not recoil in disgust, there is something wrong with you. This is a white man mocking several black women, essentially calling them stupid, accusing them of stealing white people's jobs, and making fun of one of these women because she briefly stumbled over her words while giving a public lecture. Affirmative action helps people who historically have been discriminated against so that they can have the same opportunities as others. This woman recognized that she was able to have her career because affirmative action gave her opportunities that she might not have had because of her race and gender. She recognized that she was helped by these type of programs and these type of policies, and she wants to help, continue that help and offer it to others. And Kirk's response is to mock her, call her stupid. This is evil. Seriously, how Kirk acts in this video, this is evil. And if you won't call this evil, you are a hypocrite. If you're a Republican, if you're a Christian, and you get up and you bash people on the left and you won't look at what Kirk says here and call this evil, shame on you. Seriously, this is not how Christians should act. Let's look at another example.
About that.
Well, George Floyd didn't die because of the police officer. He died largely because of a drug overdose.
But he had his knee on his neck. And we all saw the video.
But the knee on the neck is actually an approved police technique that police departments taught Derek Chauvin to use. Do you know that George Floyd was saying, I couldn't breathe well before that restraining technique? And
so why'd they use the technique if he already couldn't breathe?
Well, because he was actually resisting arrest. According to the medical examiner, he was drug overdosing in real time. That it wasn't because of the police officer, Derek Chauvin, that put his knee on the neck. Our whole country blew up because of this incident, and it was largely based on a lie.
So let's get all on the same page here. In 2020, George Floyd, a black man, was brutally killed by police officer Derek Chauvin. Chauvin, the police officer in question, was sentenced to roughly 22 years in prison for murder. And Kirk had suggested that the murderer should actually be pardoned. He should be set free. So that's what's going on in that video. So what Kirk has said in that video is plainly false and has been debunked. The medical examiner has said point blank that he considers this a homicide. Kirk took one statement from the medical examiner out of context. He ignored the rest of what he said, and then he spread misinformation about it, because by doing so, he was able to counteract an example of clear police brutality and racism in America, which Kirk's fragile worldview just could not handle. So AFP has a fact check available for this claim by Kirk that I suggest interested parties check out. So again, imagine that you are a friend or family member of Floyd, or maybe you're just a black man in America who you've experienced racism of this degree, or you've had it happen to friends and family, or maybe you just see the video of Floyd being murdered. You watch it. You watch the murderer convicted in a jury of his peers. And then you see Charlie Kirk saying that that murderer should be convicted because actually Floyd was just drugged up. Imagine how that would make you feel. While we are on, Kirk's language about African Americans, let's see some other things that Kirk has said on that topic.
Now, were they trying to hijack her? Were these blacks trying to go rob her? Happening all the time in urban America. Prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. It's happening more and more.
So that was Kirk making a blanket statement about how prowling blacks are going around urban areas hunting whites. This clearly promotes racial stereotype and increases racial tensions. But Kirk is not content to just make racist, hateful remarks about black people. He's an equal opportunity racist. Let's see an example of that.
Everyone says, well, we just need immigrants to come legally. We just need immigrants to come legally. That's not true. Omar Fatah came here legally. Ilhan Omar came here legally. Rashida Tlaib, her parents came here legally. Zohran Mamdani came here legally. Here's another piece of tape. Now, this you might think, I want you to guess, actually. I'm going to play this piece of tape. Where is this? Is it Mogadishu? Is it Brussels? Is it Berlin? Is it Minneapolis? Let's play Guess the State. Guess the State here live on the Charlie Kirk Show. And I'm not allowed to say that this guy's not an American. I'm sorry, he's not an American. Play cut 393. That is in. Anybody? OHIO. How's that, Danny? Your state's doing great. That is an Ohio victory party for Islami Muhammad. Now, when we think of what it means to be an American, is someone by the name of Islami Muhammad? Yeah, I don't think so.
So in this clip, we have Kirk telling people that they are not real Americans because of their name and because of the language that they speak. Again, imagine how this might make a racial minority feel. Imagine how this might make immigrants feel, or those who are friends with immigrants, or those of us who just in general actually have a conscience. So Charlie Kirk said things that should cause any rational, moral person to react in disgust and anger. Charlie Kirk has done a lot of harm to our political landscape through these type of remarks. And your disgust at the people who say hateful things about Kirk's death, I suspect it is very similar to the disgust that many people felt as a result of Kirk's career of spreading hate, misinformation, sexism, and racism. A major difference is that many of us, like myself, Than, John, when we start to feel that hatred rising in us, we censor it. We take that feeling, that disgust, and we submit it to the teaching of Christ. But there are many people in this country who don't have Christ's teaching to censor their hatred. And so that hatred grows to the point that they rejoice when they see Kirk killed, because in their mind, they see the death of Kirk as the death of an enemy combatant. And that is wrong. We should not rejoice over Kirk's death, and we should not approve of it no matter how much we disliked what he said. And I really disliked what he said. With that in mind, although I disapprove of these people celebrating Kirk's death, I sincerely understand where they are coming from. I understand why they look at it and they joke and they mock and they make like. I don't approve of it, but I sincerely understand it. And to say that I understand where they're coming from does not negate my condemnation. I think any intellectually honest person has to admit Kirk said things that were contemptible, vile, and evil. I don't think people hated Kirk because he was a Christian or because he was a Republican, at least not primarily those things. I think people hated Kirk because Kirk said the vile, heinous, unchristian things that I have shown you in this video. And because of the hate that these vile comments, provoked in them, they wrongfully celebrate Kirk's death. And with this in mind, I want to make a couple closing comments. First, if you want to applaud Kirk's advocacy on like a specific area, you want to say, hey, I like that, he was an advocate for the pro-life movement. Okay. If you want to applaud his efforts to get people to be Christian, okay. Don't idolize this man. Stop putting him on a pedestal. Stop sanitizing him. Stop acting like he is a role model. He is not. We should not want more people like Charlie Kirk in the church. We should not want that. We should want people who are far, far better than his racist, hateful, propagandist nonsense. Charlie Kirk made Christianity look worse. He is an embarrassment to Jesus Christ and everything that Christ stands for on a wide range of issues. I'm not going to say there's not any area where, Kirk doesn't get it right. Yeah, there's some areas he gets it right. He gets things right there. But overall, how he talks about other people, how he views other people, Kirk did not see Christ in other people. Kirk did not see Christ in the immigrant. Kirk did not see Christ in the black, House member or Congress member who's talking about her experiences when he called them stupid. Kirk doesn't see Christ in the people who are suffering from rape or suffering from all these things. All he sees, in my view, all he saw was the enemy. All he saw was liberals. And so he just channeled his hate towards them.
We all have a lot of strong feelings. We are all angry and we are all hurting right now. But there are probably more things we can agree on that can bring us together, if that's what we want. We have to stop viewing each other as enemies. Stop allowing media to rile us up and turn us against each other. Because if we continue down the road that we are going, I believe we will destroy ourselves in the process. That being said, it's okay to have strong feelings about Charlie Kirk. It's okay to have mixed feelings. Maybe you liked him and how he talked about his faith, or maybe you dislike him as a person. You can express your disagreement and still be upset with how he died and still have empathy for him and his family. I think it's important that we keep talking while trying to be respectful and empathetic towards one another.
What happened to Charlie Kirk was horrific and a tragedy. What happened, as you mentioned, to the state legislators in Minnesota, that is horrific. It is a tragedy. And there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The central premise of our democratic system is that we have to be able to disagree and have sometimes really contentious debates without resort to violence. And when it happens to some, but even if you think they're quote unquote on the other side of the argument, that's a threat to all of us. And we have to be clear and forthright in condemning it. Obviously, I didn't know Charlie Kirk. I was generally aware of some of his ideas. I think those ideas were wrong. But that doesn't negate the fact that what happened was a tragedy and that I mourn for him and his family. He's a young man with 2 small children and a wife who obviously, and a huge number of friends and supporters who cared about him. So we have to extend grace to people during their period of mourning and shock. And so when I hear not just our current president, but his aides, who have a history of calling political opponents vermin, enemies, who need to be targeted, that speaks to a broader problem that we have right now. And something that we're going to have to grapple with, all of us.
While this video is an opinion piece, I've also been doing research into the things that Charlie Kirk claimed to see if they are true and backed by evidence. I'm currently working tirelessly on researching Charlie Kirk's claims concerning underqualified black pilots. What was his argument in its full context? And was there evidence to back him up? Was he lying or merely speculating? In just a moment, I will share a preview of one of those videos we will be evaluating, deconstructing, and comparing with all the evidence. But before I show you that clip, if you enjoyed this, please hit the subscribe button for more content on the way.
You got yourself in some trouble online because you're always stirring up trouble online.
Oh,
reacting
I'm such
to
a troublemaker.
You are a troublemaker. Reacting to a June 2021 clip, but it was making the rounds on X, of the CEO of United Airlines, Scott Kirby, talking about their quotas over at United for diversity in the ranks of pilots, which is extremely controversial for obvious reasons. Here's the clip that you were reacting to in South 13.
Military. How is diversity and diversity targets working into the Aviation Academy?
We have committed that 50% of the class of the classes will be women or people of color. Today, only 19% of our pilots at United Airlines are women or people of color. And by the way, from all the data I've seen, that's the highest of any airline in the country.
White males don't just dominate in the cockpits, also in the C-suite at United Airlines.
Well, look, at United, I'm proud of the diversity that we actually have in our C-suite. I think if you look around corporate America.
Correct me if I'm saying, though, so this was just based off your website, the people you list as executives, but out of 11 people, 3 are women. I believe 1 is a person of color.
That's correct. But, in corporate America, I think,
That's a low bar. How do you raise your own bar?
Well, a lot of this is, focusing on it. We have programs to, one of the things we do is for every job when we do an interview, we require women and people of color to be involved in the interview process.
Shut up. Oh, I'm sick of this nonsense.
It's so repulsive.
All right, so wait, let me finish it by your reaction to it. And people freaked out because you said the thing that you're not supposed to say, but that's what you're known for. Here he is in SOT 14 on Charlie's show.
And that's why I think this United story and the DEI story hits so hard, because we've all been in the back of a plane when the turbulence hits, or when you're flying through a storm and you're like, I'm so glad I saw the guy with the right stuff and the square jaw get into the cockpit before we took off, and I feel better now thinking about that.
No, I mean, you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.
The meltdown after this with people like, oh, and the response, the proper response was from you, from people like Matt Walsh. This is the world you people have created. You have created this world where you make somebody's skin color the sole criterion for hiring, and then you react in horror when people wonder whether the qualifications are also there. The nerve to get so indignant about your reaction to that. This is their world. You're just living in it.
Yes, and I want to just reiterate the essence of that clip that was missed by almost everybody.
If you have any questions regarding Charlie Kirk, things that he said, or anything you want to see, please let me know down in the comments. And if you have appreciated this video, please consider becoming a patron, and don't forget to subscribe. Please like this and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching.